Mini episode 326 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Welcome to FDH Lounge, mini episode number 326. Rick Morris and Kyle Ross, your FDH Lounge dignitaries, breaking down the football for you. A very good week with the NFL last week. We haven't been able to say that too often on the show, especially myself. 10-4-1 overall on my picks, 2-1 on my big three, 1-0 on my lock. Numbers for the season considerably less than that. 38, 49, and 6 is all I was able to rally to. 3-15 on the big three, 1-5 on my locks. K-Dog, an excellent week for you. I know you were undefeated with a push in there. Was it 1-0-1 or 2-0-1? I kind of lost track.
I thought I was 3-0. Quite frankly, I think it was the second week in a row. You're trying to shortchange me to
no. The New England line was 3 when we did it. So.
Oh, stop it! That line was never 3. Stop that!
I'll give you credit for it.
When was that line 3? I don't think that line was ever 3.
3 is the only number I have written down. I didn't even have any movements for it either way. So we'll give you that one.
That number was like a 1 all week. I know I won. I won my bet.
Well, because you won your bets, we'll give it to you. That's fine. I'm not.
It was great.
I'm not looking to
Are you using that no good? Are you still using that no good scores and odds.com? I tried to.
We're not supposed to single anybody out by name here. But,
okay. But he's still using that. Yeah, because no. I don't know who's doing their webmaster this year, but they've.
Okay.
I've never been able to. Yeah, I've never. Those lines they put, I've never really seen them out. You have to play.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you had the Dallas game, which was also a winner. So 3-0.
Yeah, I had the Dallas game too. I had the Dallas game as well. Yeah, okay. I had the Dallas game.
All right.
And I had Pittsburgh.
And Pittsburgh. Yes, I knew about the Pittsburgh one as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So a 3-0 week for you. Right about a push for the season, but that's way in front of me. Way in front of me.
10-9. 10-9.
Yes.
Yeah. We got 10-9.
You actually have your head above water, so it's all good.
Yeah. Finally above the Mendoza line.
Exactly. We have just about a full slate this week. The only bye goes to New Orleans and Oakland, so we're going to have to push through these. The Thursday nighter, again, always go check the Twitter at the FDH Lounge if you want to get the FDH Lounge pick. You're not hearing me say this in time, but Seattle is at Arizona. They're laying 4.5. It's been a pretty steady number throughout the week. I like Arizona getting the 4.5 at home. Don't think they can win, but I think they can be the proverbial penis puncher that I speak of so often and be the weak team that slips in through the back door.
Yeah, obviously when you take a look at this, Seattle, that number has come way down today, hasn't it? I mean, that's the only thing that scares me.
6.5, I think, yeah.
It was high as 7 in some places earlier in the week.
Ooh, okay.
So I definitely like the Cardinals a little less and can't recommend them, but home dog on a Thursday night, we talked about last week, Thursday, said the Giants were the only way to play it given their ATS record, and I think the dog, if you do want to play this game, is the only way to do it. Seattle, on the road, they're 2-1, but both wins are pretty close. They beat Carolina by 5 in week 1, and then they beat Houston in that big comeback that, sent the Texans season on the toilet. And then they lost Indianapolis. So the Cardinals have revenge. They lost 58-0 last time these teams played. So if you're going to play this one, I would lean toward the home dog. But, the number coming down like that lays me off recommending it.
Okay. I can understand that, certainly. We start off here with the Sunday games. AFC East battle, the 5-1 Patriots at the 3-3 Jets. Gumbel and Deerdorf on the call for CBS, so it is officially the B game on that network. Line is New England laying 3. Started at 3.5, went up to 4 at one point, has come back down. I just keep coming back to, in all of this, I think the greatest variable on either side is Geno Smith. And I think, again, he's going to continue to look, I think, more so like a rookie than the guy who's been able to rally and get things done at various times last week. The Pittsburgh game last week to me was a real indicator of where this guy is at. He came in, he provided a spark early on. He didn't do that great against the Patriots the first time. I don't think he will this time. I like New England laying the 3 on the road.
The only thing is, New England, while 5-1, is kind of a shaky 5-1.
Yeah.
And you can get some 3.5s here if you really shop around on the Jets. And, I mean, you know me, I would never recommend a road favorite. I did do it once, and it won, ironically enough, Washington. I believe it was week 3 against Oakland. But, Geno Smith isn't Matt Flynn either. So I'm laying off this one. I've seen a lot of, believe it or not, Jets love at 3.5 among the sharps in this one, figuring the Patriots off the big win over the Saints could be in store for a letdown. The Jets did play him within 3 in New England earlier in the year, keep in mind. I'm with you, though.
Yes.
I'm not sold on Geno Smith. He is, I mean, he's going to be what I think a lot of rookie quarterbacks are. They're not all Andrew Luck. They're not all Russell Wilson. Could be wildly inconsistent, and you don't know what you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. Certainly there was a huge variance between how he played against Atlanta and how he played against Pittsburgh. So I'm passing on this one.
I think that's probably pretty smart. This next one is not one that you'd want to get down on as one of your 4 games either. To be sure, the 3-3 Chargers going to the East Coast at 0-6 Jacksonville. Spiro Ditas and Steve Berline will have the pleasure of broadcasting this on CBS, he said sarcastically. San Diego is laying 7 in this one, down from 9 initially. Again, far from a recommended play on my part, but I do give it an opinion on every game. This is one where, again, short week, East Coast travel. Feels like I'm setting up to say Jacksonville, right? No. As San Diego's been one of these teams that's thwarted me a lot during the season, and they probably will again. But I just don't see Jacksonville slipping through this back door. I would like San Diego laying the 7.
No. I mean, there's a lot of road favorites this week, and Jacksonville. The only problem is they're not getting 26, 27 points this week. They were,
yeah.
It was a nice one. I mean, that was a pretty easy cover last week for them, and they never was really in doubt, and it just goes to show you never lay that many points in an NFL game. San Diego coming off the short week. I think you and I agreed. We both liked them, didn't we? At the end of the show last week against Indianapolis, we both kind of thought that maybe it was going to be a trap game for the Colts, and it turned out to be.
I'd love to agree with you, but no, I had the Colts.
Oh, okay. San Diego is one of those teams that just seems that it's going to be clearly better than I thought they were before the year, and so that I'm a little leery about going against them, especially, with Jacksonville, who, if they're not getting, like I said, 26, 27 points, really will never have my interest. So I'm laying off this one, too. It's just, it's a game where, the old Chargers, under Norv Turner would certainly be in danger of, losing outright here. I don't think that's the case under McCoy, but it could be closer than people think and probably going to fall right around the number.
It'll probably be in the vicinity of the number.
I was going to say, we've talked about this a couple times a year, and I think San Diego, this will complete their schedule against the AFC South, if memory serves me correct. Yeah, because they played Houston, they've played Indy, and they've played Tennessee. They've got an unbelievable lights-out record, if you remember, against the AFC South. It's something like 22-4 against the number now. Last week win and cover, so they've had it, but I wouldn't want to lay 7 on the road.
I'm looking for 23 right here. I think the Chargers can do it. Speaking of the AFC South, the looking to be deposed division champions, one of the big shockers of the NFL thus far this year, the 2-4 Texans at the 6-0 Chiefs. Just think about what we would have thought about those numbers at the beginning of the year, as well as these numbers. Chiefs laying 6.5 here, up from 4.5 at the beginning of the year. This is one of these things where, again, it's kind of a dubious handicapping principle to really hang your hat on, I know, But something that I've found over the years, if you look at a game where there's a point spread that, and taking into account that there's no injuries that are swinging it either way, and notwithstanding what happened to Matt Schaub, you can't say that's the major reason for this point spread being what it is. Anything that really would have shocked you several weeks ago, maybe the dog is undervalued. And that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I know that it's going to be the decision coming down today. Case Keenum going to be starting for Houston. It's a tough spot on the road. But 6.5 is a lot, especially for a team with as good of a defense as Houston's. I do like them to get inside of that. I'd be surprised if they won, but I think they can stay inside the 6.5.
Love where your head's at. Last week was the first week I feel all year where I really felt I had a good grasp on the league. Nothing really shocked me that happened last week, with one exception, that being Houston's lay-down effort against St. Louis. I warned you, so I was a little nervous that the number had gone above a score, a full touchdown, but I never thought in my wildest dreams Houston would lose the game outright, let alone get blown out. Yet, it's so amazing, Ricky. If you go inside the numbers, Houston outgained like every opponent this year. They held St. Louis to barely over 200 yards total. Houston, believe still, despite the record and despite the ineptitude we've seen over the last month, has the best yards per game difference in the league at 2-4. It's better than Denver.
And this is unbelievable. I mean, their run defense, fairly pedestrian, 121.5 yards per game against. Pass defense, supersonic, 131.3.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a team 6 weeks into the season that's only had 10 yards difference between run and pass on yards allowed per game? It's amazing.
It is crazy, and I'm with you. I don't think Houston's going to win this game, and it is over for them in the division. I think Case Keenum is kind of an amateur hour move by Gary Kubiak, who may not be with us next year, at least as the coach of the Houston Texans. But my first of 4 recommended plays this week will be the Houston Texans plus the points. Wait as long as you can to bet this game, too, because I think the number is going to keep going up. I think they stay inside the number. They are the only winless spread team in the league right now. Eventually they're going, what are they not going to cover every game? So the Houston Texans plus points. Kansas City's been kind of shaky the last 2 weeks against Tennessee and Oakland. Like I said, I think it's going to be a battle of 9-0 teams when they play Denver, but there's no denying that while they may have the same records, one team is significantly better than the other. Kansas City is at 6-0 is not as good as Denver as 6-0.
That's very, very true in my opinion. I certainly agree with that. And again, when you're looking at the value of Kansas City and Houston, respectively, I think that's pointing us in the same direction.
Yeah, total value play. Total value play. I loved your breakdown that, at the beginning of the season, there's no way that this line is where it's at. And look, Kansas City's got a great defense. They played well, but they have the makings of a 12-4 team that still loses on Wild Card weekend.
At this point last year, I think it's a 2-touchdown swing. I think Houston, even if they're going in there, is probably laying more than a touchdown at this point last year. So it just kind of goes to show you how much things have changed in 12 months. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Truly.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about a battle of the AFC East previously. Here's the other 2 teams doing battle here. It's the 2-4 Bills at the 3-2 Dolphins at Sun Life Stadium. My Dolphins, my 1A team, as I've said previously on the show, they are laying a touchdown in this one, down from 9 initially. A big game, a game with a chance to put away the Bills for all intents and purposes in the wild card / divisional race. They're probably out of the divisional race already, but at least as far as the wild card goes. And yet, again, as I've said previously, I think the Bills just have a chance to get in the back door. I don't think they can go in and win this game. Thad Lewis with a very good job last week getting thrown into the mix. Boy, could the Browns use him right now. I'm sure they're regretting having ditched him. But having said that, and he's a little bit banged up, I think they can keep it close enough. Miami coming off the bye is going to be dangerous, but I think in what is likely to be a lower-scoring game that Buffalo can stay inside the number.
Yeah, I do too. except, keep in mind that this is going to be Thad Lewis on the road now as opposed to Thad Lewis at home. And they were kind of lucky to get the game close. Cincinnati sort of, I think, thought the game was over before it was last week. I mean, if I remember correctly, Cincinnati was up 24-10. They allowed 2 late touchdowns and then had to win the game in overtime. Yeah, that's how it went. But Miami's not a team that I would want to lay more than 1 score with. So, again, I'm laying off. No recommendations here. But you're right. I'm kind of with you. If I had to play it, I would probably take the points with Buffalo. Not a bad defensive team, and Stevie Johnson's coming back this week. Man, the luster's off Miami, by the way, after that 3-0 start as well. I mean, with the back-to-back losses, they're kind of, everyone's kind of forgotten about them. But they'll be in play, I think, for the second of the 2 wild cards. Kansas City's definitely going to get the one in the AFC, but that other one, kind of like, it's funny, at the beginning of the year, we talked about how maybe it's probably only going to take 8 or 9 wins to make the playoffs in the AFC. That's still going to be the case for that final wild card. I mean, you find me a 6th good team in the AFC, you're a better man than I.
You're absolutely right about that, and the Dolphins are very much in the mix. You talked about a little bit of luster being gone. That certainly sets up the home team in our next game. The 4-2 Bears are at the 1-4 Redskins. This is 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland on Sunday. 4-time lounge guest Kenny Albert on the call, along with Daryl Moose Johnston and Tony Siragusa. And this game is a pick. At various points in time, I've seen Washington laying 1 during the course of the week. Again, this is a team where a real reversal of fortune for the Redskins from last year. The Bears pretty much, interestingly enough, the same as last year. Not for the most part. People forget they were 10-6, albeit in missing the playoffs. Riding relatively high again. A little bit of, again, you talk about how Miami had the 3-0 start. So, too, did the Bears, and they've kind of scuffed a little bit the last couple of weeks since then. In a similar spot, Washington proved me wrong against Detroit previously, but this is about as desperation as it gets. In the worst division in football by far, they're not out of it yet, although they're pretty far down. I like them in a desperation setting here to slip past the Bears and cover the, obviously, pick.
Ricky, with the exception of taking the ugly dog Houston, I wish I had more for you, at least so far this week on these games. But this is another one that I have no interest in getting involved with. The Bears have finally kind of flipped their identity. They're an offensive team, not a defensive team now. Mm-hmm. And Jay Cutler should definitely be able to put up good numbers against this horrid Washington secondary. But keep in mind that last week they didn't cover against the Giants. Now, granted, it was a much bigger number they were laying there. But at the same time, 3 of Chicago's 4 wins now by 6 points or less, so they've been winning close. Obviously, the spread's kind of negligible here. You talked about the desperation with the Redskins. I can go back and forth on this game the whole way. I'm laying off because Washington, look, I said coming into the year that was a team I was seemingly down on more than anybody. I didn't even think they'd be this bad. So I liked the Cowboys last week against them, but now they're at home, and, the division's bad, but with Dallas and Philly playing this week, someone's going to get to 4 wins, and Washington can't afford to fall too far behind. So to me, this is a coin flip game like the point spread indicates, so I'm laying off.
All right, well, speaking of those other 2 teams, we got that one coming up next. 2 teams that are 3-3, Dallas at Philly. Fox is sending the A-team for this one. Tom Brenneman, Troy Aikman, and the delicious Pam Oliver, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, Lincoln Financial Field in Philly. And in looking at this game, this is very interesting. Philly's laying 2.5, started as a pick'em. I'll be very interested to hear your reasoning. You let me know off air what your big plays were going to be for the week. This is one where I started off, this was almost a borderline lock for me. I loved Dallas coming in this situation, but I have flipped my jib on this one altogether. I'm going with Philadelphia. Part of my rationale, Dallas's defense isn't completely up to snuff at this point. They've got some key injuries in there. It does figure to be 2 teams going up and down the field an awful lot, and that's the kind of game that Philadelphia can win. They can only really win those type of games right now because their defense is so bogus. I'm going towards Philadelphia, but I don't have a better rationale than that. I know Philly is one of your big plays for the week, so please let me know why and why I'm right going with Philadelphia.
Look, I loved Dallas last week, and if there's anything we've been able to discern, it's that we talked about the Chargers earlier. The Cowboys are a real Jekyll and Hyde team too. And first of all, you can get the Eagles at -2.5, which I would highly recommend doing if you could, at most places at this point. And I think you're going to. Most of the money here during the week has come in on Dallas, and a public underdog like that is usually a team to fade. Another reason that I like the Eagles, this team hasn't covered a home game now in a year and a half. What are they not going to cover every home game? So that's a typical Kyle angle right there. And also, I'll be honest with you, when he first kind of emerged onto the scene, I thought it was kind of laughable. But Nick Foles, I think, is the better option in this Chip Kelly offense than Mike Vick. Not only financially does it make more sense because Vick is, in the final year of a contract year, you're not going to want to pay him, anywhere near the kind of money he's getting right now. But Foles just gets the ball out quicker, and they've looked a lot better, and he doesn't turn the ball over as much. Dallas, this is it's the perfect time to go against them. Everyone's high on them. They're back to 500. They had the game against, the moral victory, as Jerry Jones called it, against Denver. Then you had the big division win on Sunday night against Washington. I think the Eagles at home are due to cover. I think that Chip Kelly's demise has been greatly exaggerated by those who want him to fail. I'm telling you, these teams are going to be in a dogfight all year long in this division. The Eagles have surprised me, by going 2-1 on that 3-game road trip. Now they're back at home. They're due to cover. Love the Eagles this week. This is actually my favorite play. I'll lay the points.
Okay. All right. Well, I knew you'd have a rationale all lined up for that one, or multiple ones, as the case may be. Sounds good to me. This next one here, this is kind of a rare one for me. It's not one of my big 3 plays for the week, but it's only my second Why Ask Why of the season. I actually lost on my first one a couple of weeks ago. The 3-3 Rams at the 2-3 Panthers, and Carolina is laying 6.5 at home. It opened at 7. This is a thing where it seems steep to me, and that's why I'm going with Carolina. I've learned that if the point spreads seem to smell, that it's probably because the wise guys know something. I just don't get how, and I understand Carolina's coming off a big week, but in some ways that makes it all the more puzzling because what St. Louis did to Houston, I think, is both of these were road situations, I think is even more impressive than what Carolina did. So you can't ascribe this to short-term thinking. I'm just confused as to why the Panthers are laying almost a touchdown at home to St. Louis, given where they're both at right now. And because of that, why ask why? I'm on the Panthers.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. The Rams, that was a phony win against the Titans. You don't want to take anything away from a team, but Houston kind of just beat itself last week. I mean, did you see the total yardage? I have almost never – let me bring this up here, if we can just stall for 1 second here. I've never seen a game where one team, the St. Louis Rams, they win 38-13, okay?
Yeah. They
gained 216 total yards for the game. Houston gained 420. Doubled them up, and they lost 38-13. The difference was obviously the 4 turnovers. That's a really kind of phony result, and I think what you're seeing here is the odds makers are putting very little stock into that Rams victory. Now, Carolina is a dangerous team to back because of that 2-4, especially when they're laying 7, because they're like 2-14, I believe, is the record under Rivera in games decided by 7 points or less. But, Ron Rivera, bless his soul, you've maybe read it elsewhere, he's going for it on 4th down. He seems like a changed man. Cam Newton still has no receivers and isn't until hopefully they draft one next year. But this thing has a very good defense. St. Louis is terrible against the run. Carolina, the one thing they can do offensively is run. This almost got a recommended play for me. I think the Panthers roll them, to be honest with you. It's not one of my recommended plays. And to be honest with you, I kind of almost want to make it one, but I'm going to chicken out. I think if you play this one, you actually lay the number. I think Carolina has a chance to win this one big. I know like a Dallas or a San Diego. They look great one week and piss poor the next. But look, I have no regard for St. Louis whatsoever. I know that you and I differ on that. I don't think this is a very good team. St. Louis is very good. Carolina, somebody's got to make some noise in that NFC South and at least pretend to make it a race with New Orleans. So I think Carolina has the potential to blow St. Louis out here.
Well, I intuited that the wise guys would have a rationale. You being one of the wise guys set that up perfectly. As far as it goes with the NFC South, that sets up our next game. Who would have believed this one combined victory between them to date? 0-5 Bucks at the 1-4 Falcons. 1 o'clock Eastern time on Fox at the Georgia Dome. In Atlanta is laying 7 in this one, down from 7.5. This is another tough one. This is probably a stay away for most of the wise guys out there because of the sloppiness of the teams involved. I think Atlanta's going to win the game, but that offense is just so beat up. Again, the same rationale I used earlier with Houston and I used with Buffalo. I think Tampa Bay's coming in the back door. I would take the 7.
No interest in this game. You're right. Too many injuries with Atlanta, and I think we're a couple weeks away from a near mutiny with Tampa Bay. Shades of Grambling. What's going on down there? I mean, that's a bad situation. I'll tell you this. Atlanta, if you don't believe in the analytics, if you don't believe in the numbers that we went through before the season, this team is exhibit A, B, and C in all of them. I mean, it was a very fortunate 13-3 last year. They beat a lot of bad teams close at home. This year they're losing all the close games, a lot of injuries. So they're not as bad as and you know me, I've been as critical of Atlanta as anybody the last couple of years for kind of being more pretender than contender. But the bottom line is this. They weren't as good as their record last year. They're not as bad as their record this year. They'll be somewhere in between next year probably. And Tampa Bay, once they get a real coach and a real quarterback, I look for them. I know here's your Kyle Ross very early 2014 NFC South preview. I look for them to be a much improved team next year, but until then, it's going to be pretty ugly. I mean, this is a team that's going to pick very high in the draft. Teddy Bridgewater or Marcus Mariota will probably be their starting quarterback next year.
Yeah, it's going to take a new coach, a new quarterback, and most importantly, probably a new locker room, one that does not include any staph infection anywhere, because that's been an issue for them.
Yeah, that's true.
Well.
Yeah, that's true. That doesn't help any of the matters either, yeah.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, no question about it. This next one here was borderline for one of my big three during the week, but you would have been ragging on me for being an old road favorite Ricky if that were the case. So you are having some effect on me, I suppose.
I was so proud of you. I was so proud. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I was so proud. Didn't you learn from last? You took Baltimore as the 3-point home dog. They only lost by 2. If that isn't proof positive that you need to come on the other side, I don't know what is.
You keep talking about situations like that. I just don't see that many of them. But I actually won and benefited from it. They snuck underneath in there. They lost the game but still covered. In this one here, again, I like the road favorite. It's 4-2 San Francisco at 3-3 Tennessee. It's hard to like San Francisco too much because of the travel, and that's another thing that you've pointed out to me is moving across time zones. But I almost get the sense in looking at this, because last week I was very much in the minority in picking Tennessee to cover at Seattle. And I understand there are no moral victories in the NFL, but that's as close as I've seen to one in a long, long, long time. They hung in there with Seattle. Very rarely do you get that kind of satisfaction let down off of a loss, but I think Tennessee, having their second consecutive game against an NFC West powerhouse, you may see a little bit of that. There may be a little bit of a letdown from coming so close at Seattle. I love San Francisco laying the 3.5. Like I said, started at 5 earlier in the week. I like them laying the 3.5.
Tennessee's been getting some love from the Sharps, but I'll be honest with you, I don't see it, Ricky. By the way, home dogs record this year, 19-13 against the spread overall. You're right. It is kind of rare that a field goal underdog at home would lose the game and not cover. A lot of times they just obviously win the game outright. The point spread only comes into play usually a couple games per week in the NFL. But back to Tennessee, I mean, the quarterback situation still is bad, and here's a stat for you. Teams, you talk about the back-to-back NFC West opponents. Teams the week after playing Seattle, this used to be the case a couple of years ago with Pittsburgh. they always said a team who would play Pittsburgh, they'd be beat up, and they wouldn't play as well the next week. We're seeing that with Seattle this year. The team that played Seattle the previous week has failed to cover the next week every single game, and I think they may have lost outright every week, too. We saw it with the Colts on Monday night last week, and, I could go back real close, but I'm pretty sure that it's now 0-5, 0-4 straight up against the spread the week after playing Seattle, if I've got my math correct. So Tennessee may just not have enough left in the tank. And another thing to keep in mind, too, you talk about that moral victory against Seattle. They were lucky to kind of cover that game. I mean, I was with you. You maybe want to take the point. Seattle was off a disappointing loss. But they didn't score a touchdown. Their only touchdown was that bizarre field goal return. So San Francisco's kind of turning it around. Kaepernick, not so much. But as a team, they're playing a lot better. So I cannot back the home dog here, and I'll lay off.
Okay. 5 games to go here. 2 more till we get to my big 3. You talk about that car crash effect the week after playing Seattle. That has been ascribed in recent years to both of the teams that are playing in this next game here, the 3-3 Ravens at the 1-4 Steelers. I've heard it spoken about in terms of the week after you play very physical teams like that. Pittsburgh in this one laying 1 at home. It had been up as high as 2.5 from what I've seen. This is one, again, where, as opposed to with Washington, where they still have some tiny shred of a hope of winning in the division or getting a wild card, I think the ship's already sailed for Pittsburgh. I think a lot of people are looking at this saying it's now or never. I think it was now or never 2 weeks ago. I think it's a little too late for them. I like Baltimore in a bounce-back situation on the road getting a point.
Yeah, this is my 3rd of 4 recommended plays, joining Houston and Philadelphia, Baltimore. I think Pittsburgh is a nice win. They were a recommended play last week, but it was situationally, it was just such a great spot for them. They were off a bye week, desperate, winless. Jets off a huge outright victory on the road on Monday night. Baltimore, add them to that list of the San Diegos, the Dallases, the Carolinas, of up 1 week, down the next. They're due for a bounce back this week after the home loss to Green Bay. Baltimore, to me, they are who I thought they were before the year. They're going to be probably an 8-8 team that is in the mix for that final wild card. So they'll win here. Pittsburgh is heading for a top 5 draft pick.
They are, and this week is just going to be a road bump along that path, no question. The Sunday nighter, the Denver Broncos laying now 6.5, up from 5.5 at the open, at the 4-2 Colts. This is one where, again, a lot of hype. Manning v. Luck for the first time. Manning playing the Colts for the first time. Manning coming back to Indianapolis for the first time. His first meeting with them just happens to be a road game. A lot of hype about the comments of Jim Irsay flapping his trap. If it were not for Jim Irsay, I would feel very confident in what I'm about to say. As it is, I'm like semi-confident. Peyton and the Broncos have been revved up by the stupidity of Jim Irsay. Having said that, again, I do like Indianapolis getting the 6.5, and I think they're a very live dog in this situation here. I think Denver, as they showed last week, a little bit overvalued at this point. Indianapolis has got a defense that can score with them. Granted, the Broncos are getting back Von Miller under the circumstance, so I've probably said more things that points to Denver than I do Indy at this point. But nevertheless, I just feel like the Colts are getting slept on in this situation. I like them getting the 6.5.
You won't believe this. I really wrestled whether or not to make this a recommended play, and by this, I mean the Broncos. Look, it's so. I think there is. I would be a lot more shocked if Indy won this game than if Denver won in a complete rout. Indy, it's funny, they beat Seattle, and I think their stock was at an all-time high. It was great. A lot of the handicappers by Monday night, the time Monday afternoon rolled around, were on San Diego. I noticed a lot of people, almost everyone loved San Diego. I looked the next morning around, almost everyone got the win with San Diego. And it just feels that, all those analytics before the year that indicated the Colts were going to, regress a little bit, people had forgotten about those because they were 4-1. The division looks like it's easy. I'm not forgetting about those. Look, Indy's going to win the division, but it's going to be an ugly division win, which they're probably going to be like 9-7. They're not going to win this game, I'll tell you that much. And people are it's so funny because of the point spread, and it's why you take Jacksonville is just because the public sentiment that, Denver's got to blow them out. And now it's so funny because they didn't win by 28 points. People think the Broncos are struggling. They still won the game by They still won an NFL game by double digits and led 14-0 after 5 minutes. I mean, I almost had a heart attack when I saw the scores 14-0 after 5 minutes. So I'm telling you, this Irsay, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, unless he's planning to hit Manning with a little sweet chin music before the game, I guess, and Luck's going to pile drive him at midfield. I think that Denver has the possibility of rolling here. By the way, if 2 of my 4 recommended plays lose and Denver and Carolina both roll, I'm going to be really mad.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see about that. And you know what? And we did not coordinate this, I swear to God. You just referenced Sweet Chin music there, and I'm about to reference my New Age Outlaws play of the year because, believe it or not, for one of my big 3, I actually like a road dog. And how often do I do that? But in this game, it is Cincinnati at Detroit, both teams 4-2. Detroit is laying 2.5 in this one. I'm all over Cincinnati in this spot. I just, part of it is I look at the legitimacy of the records between the two. Cincinnati's a more legitimate 4-2, although even you've referenced teams being up and down thus far this year. It's hard to crap on a 4-2 team that much, but the Bengals have had a couple of letdown spots as well, particularly against the Browns where they lost outright and shouldn't have, and the game against Buffalo where they tried to choke it away and didn't. Nevertheless, coming off of that game, I think they go into Detroit. I think it's a statement game for the Bengals to win this one on the road. I like them getting the 2.5.
I'm surprised this was a top 3 for you. This game, to me, there's fewer games on this week's card that I struggle with more than this one. I have, honestly, there is no result in this game that would totally shock me. I could see anything happening. I'm laying off. I get a good number. I do, in my power ratings, I have the Bengals 1 spot above the Lions, which would thus probably make them a 2.5-point dog on the road. I just can't. I have no opinion of all the games. I mean, there's some. It's like, okay, if you force me, I can pick one. If you force me, if you put a gun to my head and to make a pick here, you might have to find someone else to do the show with because I don't have any answers.
Yeah. Well,
I just have nothing. I really have I just look at this and I'm like, 2 even teams. The help of Calvin Johnson's key as well.
Well, we couldn't get Jesse Pinkman to pull the trigger at your head because he would tell you to do it yourself. But I'm sure we could find somebody under the circumstances.
Yes.
That's the first of my big 3 is the Natty getting the 2.5. The next one, I'll tell you what. Again, this just goes to show I'm not shying away from what seems to be a familiar speed. 3-3 Browns at the 3-2 Packers. I got myself into trouble the last time the Browns were a hefty dog on the road to an NFC North team as I picked them to go down to Minnesota. In this one, the Browns are getting 10. That is down from 12 initially. And yet, as bad as Brandon Weeden is looking right about now, and the fact that the Detroit defense in the second half may have started to expose the Browns a little bit thus far, and this defense may be playing a little bit over their head. Keep in mind what we've been saying coming into the season. Front 7 could be very good. Secondary may struggle. Boy, in the second half, by establishing both the pass and the run and keeping the Browns on their heels, the Lions may have exposed a little something problematic here, at least in the short term with the Browns. I don't think they can come close to keeping up with what Aaron Rodgers is going to do to them Sunday. So Green Bay laying the 10 is the second of my big 3 picks.
When you've got Brandon Weeden against Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to give me a lot more than 10 points to work with to want to take Brandon Weeden. Now, that being said, the Packers' injuries have me a little concerned.
Yes,
here's a factoid for you. Do you know your Cleveland Browns have been leading at halftime in every game this year?
That is amazing. That streak's coming to an end this week, by the way.
Yes, they are. I let me go a little exotic on you here. If you want to play this game, do Packers in the first half. I'd just be too leery of the back door. here. But I think look for Green Bay to be at least going into halftime with a touchdown lead. I would, if you want to get involved in the first half, I don't know, maybe you don't want your betting to bleed into dinner time on Sunday, go with the Pack in the first half. I can't endorse a full game recommendation, but yeah, if you wanted to do the first half, I get behind that.
All right, well, that takes us to my 1,000-star gold-plated lock of the millennium for NFL Week 7. And it also coincides with one of your picks for the week, so it's rare when that happens through the course of the season. And then, again, the one that I feel the strongest about, I am picking a winless team, albeit they're playing a team with only one win themselves, and it's the Monday Nighter. I don't often find myself on the Monday Nighter, and yet this has happened at least 3 times thus far this season where it's been one of my big 3. So it's just been kind of a weird year. The 1-4 Vikings at the 0-6 Giants, the Fran Tarkenton Bowl, if you will, although it'll probably be Josh Freeman getting the nod for Minnesota at quarterback here as they go to try that out. The Giants have screwed me multiple times this year. Kansas City, Philly, whatever, when I've said they're due. This time I mean it, okay? This time I really, really mean it. The Minnesota is a made-to-order, get-well opponent. Giants are laying 3.5 up from 2.5 at the open. I think they may very well roll in this one. A get-well situation for Eli Manning in this offense that really needs it.
With the Freeman announcement, which I believe is official as of right before we did this show, I believe it is official that Freeman's getting the nod. Don't be surprised that you get the Vikings get a little buyback at 3.5. You can maybe, if you wait till Monday, get this game at 3. The Giants are my 4th of 4 recommended plays. I agree. They've screwed me many times. They did get off the ATS schneid with the kind of sneaking into the back door last week against Chicago. Minnesota, by the way, like the Giants, winless in the United States of America this year. Their only win was the London game against the Steelers. The Vikings are a mess. Look, I told you before the year that there was no bigger candidate to regress than them. It is shown. It's more than the quarterback position, too. Other than Adrian Peterson, they're just not very strong anywhere else. And if he's not having one of the greatest seasons of all time at the running back position like he did last year, then this team's going nowhere. The Giants have to. What are they going to lose every game? I mean, I realize that they invent ways to turn the ball over seemingly every week, but at home, Monday night, a bad team coming in with a bad quarterback who's just learning the system, that's a real desperate move by the Vikings, too. Come on, Giants. Get it together. G-Man, 4th of 4 recommended plays this week.
Yeah, they're going to roll in this spot. And when you talk about it, again, going back to the St. Louis-Houston game last week and the flukiness of turnovers, turnovers are fluky also across the course of a season. The Giants are minus 16. All right, so when you talk about regression to the mean, before I didn't slip there, I almost said Peyton Manning. Is Eli Manning going to throw 5 picks to the Minnesota secondary Monday night? Because that's pretty much what it's taken for him to lose games previously. Ain't going to happen against this Viking defense.
No, it's not. The Viking secondary is horrible. I mean, Brian Hoyer, several weeks later, people are still speaking of Brian Hoyer as if he was Otto Graham because of his game against the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, the Vikings just aren't good. The Vikings, I would say, are going to be a top. They are not a good team.
No, they're not. So when you look at the recommended plays for this week, you are on the Giants, on Baltimore, on Philadelphia, and on Houston. My big 3 is Cincinnati, Green Bay, and I am also on the Giants as my lock pick for this week. So a great bounce-back situation last week, Kyle. We called our shot at the end of the show, said that we thought it would be. So I think we're rounding into form here and setting up for a profitable second half of the season.
Yes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your big play last week was Dallas, which I also agreed on. So from Sunday night to Monday night this week. So here the stars are beginning to align here. So
exactly.
I expect a big bounce back here. Although I don't necessarily feel as good about this card as I did last week. I'm really hoping that Carolina and Denver. If Carolina and Denver both roll, and I wind up going like 2-2 with my 4 recommendations, I'm gonna be kind of mad next week. So.
I had trouble finding plays outside of the Monday Nighter, but again, we shall see. I feel like I'm getting a better handle on what's happening in this very strange season, as has been the case with you. I think you're getting a good handle on it as well. A pleasure as always, my man. Thank you so much, and we will reconvene next week.
Go Colorado Avalanche.
That's a cheap shot. We're out.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.